Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Simeon Morrow EU and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please turn off your camera and microphone and or go to the Facebook Live video feed, the link to which I will now place in the chat room. There it has been placed. For a better experience, please turn off your microphone and set your video to gallery view. Tonight, our featured guest is Richard Cionco, professor of piano at California State University, Sacramento. Professor Cionco is joined by two of his musical friends, his piano student Adrian Zaragoza and Irina Saito, a faculty member of Sierra College. Also joining us tonight is Professor Lino Rivera of St. Mary's College of California and Professor Niels Moos, Director of the Opera Masters Program at the Music and Arts University of the city of Vienna. Welcome, Richard. Welcome, Adrian. Welcome, Irina.
Thank you, Simeon.
So, Richard, when I first contacted you about doing this show, I said you can do whatever you want. And then I tried to push you in the direction of philosophy or talking a lot. And you said, no, music. I want music. Why did you choose to do your show this way?
Well, firstly, thank you for having all of us. And yeah, it's nice when somebody says you can do whatever you want. You know, during the COVID-19 period we've just been experiencing, there have been virtually no live concerts. We've sort of had to adapt on the fly, and we've created this whole technological arena where we're trying to perform, and sometimes not with great success, but we keep doing it, and we keep doing it because we want to do it. I joked with my students here at the university the other day because, you know, the technology doesn't always go quite as planned. And I said, you know, we're learning as we go, and we try to make the sound as good as we can. After all, we're musicians, and the sound transmission is the most important. And we're learning as we go. And wouldn't it be funny, once we're out of this COVID-19 mess, we're going to be just perfect at this technology, and we won't need it very much anymore. But my suspicion is that we will continue to use it. And so thank you for providing us this forum today. And I wanted to bring my friends with me because, after all, you know, music is all about sharing. And, you know, you can derive inspiration from your friends, and you can share ideas. And so we want to present to our audience today what I think is a really fun program.
So, Richard, what's this first piece you're going to play? It's called Ice Cream on Walnut.
Yes, Ice Cream on Walnut is one of my postcards that I wrote for a wonderful group of people here in Sacramento, California. I play every year at a senior citizen home for my friends, and they have a wonderful big auditorium and a beautiful Steinway piano. And a couple years ago, I was asked, you know, they said, hey, we know you write pieces for the piano and for people, and would you write one for us? So, of course, I said yes. And their facility is on Walnut Avenue. And so I decided to title this Ice Cream on Walnut for them.
Okay, let's hear it. Lovely. Wow, what heartfelt music. So it seems like there's a constant dialogue going on between the left hand and the right hand. Tell us about how you wrote this music and why. I guess we'll hear more of your music in a little bit, but is that your normal style to have the two hands always talking to each other?
That's an interesting observation, and I think you're very astute. And the answer to the question simply is yes. The piano we can treat like an entire orchestra. And of course, it can also be treated vocally, it can be treated melody with accompaniment. There's an infinite number of ways one can write music for the piano. My idea is the dialogue. So you hit it right on the head. Also, that piece was kind of influenced by a few 20th century composers that I really like. One of whom is named Arvo Pärt, a great minimalist composer from Estonia. But this has a distinctly American sound to it, and that also.
Richard, would you be able to play a little bit of what Arvo Pärt sounds like?
Let's see. I would have to look it up on my computer. It might take a little too long.
Or just even just a few notes, kind of to give us the idea of what that music sounds like?
Kind of a bell-like sound, clear, bright, colorful sound on the piano.
And which part of Ice Cream on Walnut sounds like that?
Well, it doesn't necessarily sound like that, but the idea of treating the piano with a certain brightness and a certain resonance and color, I think he does very well. I'm not even sure that he's a pianist, but he understands the instrument very well.
So that's where the pedal comes in. So you leave those sounds kind of ringing. Could you play just another small excerpt from Ice Cream on Walnut so we can hear what that sounds like?
So it's kind of a rich texture, if you will, you know.
Lovely. Wonderful. So Richard, so let's see. Quick question. How did you get into piano and get into music in the first place?
Well, that brings me way back. My goodness. I have to tell you, when I was a young boy, my parents took me to a very great piano teacher named Audrey Brown. And she was just a very intense person, but also a very warm and caring person. And I took to her, and I think a great teacher can do that, can bring a student into that realm so that they want to learn. And so I stayed with her for 11 years as her piano student, and still draw on her inspiration in my own teaching. But I remember hearing a Beethoven sonata when I was probably about 6 years old at a concert that just blew my mind open. And I thought at that very moment, that's what I want to do.
Wow. So one of those aha moments, another one from Beethoven. Wonderful. So now we have I should say Professor Irina Saito, who's going to be playing R Street. Hi, Irina.
Hi, thank you for having us.
With pleasure. So maybe let's hear the music and then we can talk about it.
Sure.
Lovely. So, Irina, tell us when you first got this. So this music was dedicated to you.
Yes.
What were your first thoughts when you started playing it?
I thought it was very, how do I say, happy and bubbly. Maybe I was like that when I was younger. This was written 9 years ago, so I was quite young, and probably Richard described my positive, happy side very well in this piece. But also, it's very, somebody said mystic and a little bit sensitive part of it, and I think Richard really described it very, very well in this piece.
And can you play for us some of the bubbly part? Show us the bubbly Irina.
Okay. Probably. This motif is so fun and bubbly, I think.
And what about the other melody that keeps coming back?
Yes, it's that
See,
part.
I thought you were going to call that the bubbly part, but that's
It can be, but I
Okay.
thought it was so sweet and sensitive. So yes.
okay. So did it take you a long time to learn how to play the music to memorize it?
This piece is particularly very difficult to read, learn, because time signature changes a lot of times, and rhythm is very, very sophisticated, I should say.
These are attributes of Irina Saito also.
What do you think, Richard?
I first of all, thank you for playing that. You sound so wonderful. Yeah, the piece describes Irina Saito, I think, very well in that bubbliness which you already mentioned, but also the sweetness and the poetic side of Irina's personality. And as she said, I wrote this as a birthday present a few years ago, and I think she still exhibits all those qualities, by the way.
Thanks.
So Irina, tell us, how did you meet Richard?
So I went to Sacramento State School of Music as a student, and Richard was one of the piano faculty members, and I took his classes, and I took some lessons from him, and I went to Italy with him for a music festival, and we were always talking about food and drinks, and we're just great friends ever since we met.
Can't go wrong with food and drinks. Richard, is that the story? So you first met Irina when she came to your class?
That's right. That's right. That sums it up pretty well. And to this day, we've been great friends. I think I've known her for more than 10 years. And my wife, Natsuki Fukasawa, who is Japanese, as you know, is a dear friend of Irina Saito, and they speak Japanese together all the time. And Irina's husband, Patrick Nolan, who is a songwriter, is also a great friend of mine. And so we have just a lot in common as good friends should.
Wonderful. So let's move on to our next music selection. This is North Coast, which you are going to play, Richard. Should we hear the music first and then talk about it?
Well, I'll just one word about it. This is the shortest piece I've ever written. This is North Coast.
Wow. So I guess it doesn't need to be any longer. So tell us about why, like you said, why did you emphasize that it was short?
Well, most of the music of the postcards that I've written 6 postcards for solo piano and 6 postcards for cello and piano. They mostly came about as encore pieces that I would write for a specific venue where I was performing. And I would play an entire recital, and then I would come out and say, and now I have a piece that I wrote especially for tonight or especially for you. And this piece, North Coast, was written for after a concert I played in Mendocino, California, which is up on the North Coast. And the material I derived from improvisation. Wherever I perform, I go into a concert hall trying to figure out what the space is, what the sound of the room is, what the piano will be like. And in order to do all of that, I like to improvise. I don't sit down and play. I don't sit down and play drills or Bach or Beethoven. I sit down and I improvise, and it can be just anything. And it just can go anywhere. Well, this piece, North Coast, came out of that idea as an improvisation.
So why North Coast in particular? I mean, so you're talking about just along the Pacific coast, just that's
Yes,
what you mean, I imagine. What about the name?
all of the titles of my postcards have a place-specific name or a person's name in the title. One of the postcards is called A Sunny Night, and it's written for my friend Sunny Nabel. Irina's piece that you just heard is called R Street, because the idea came to me when we were having dinner on R Street in Sacramento. North Coast, yeah, Mendocino. It sort of fit well, I thought.
Understood. So we have an audience question. Does Richard compose for voice?
I've never composed anything for voice. My skill set seems to be geared toward piano, of course, and violin and cello. And interestingly, I've written several pieces for bassoon and viola. But voice is a great idea. I mean, it's the greatest instrument of all, perhaps, and maybe that's why it's a little daunting,
So where would you, what would you need in order to get inspiration to start composing for voice? You'd have to know a singer, or how does that work? Because it seems like the music normally comes out of inspiration you get from your friends.
That's right. The inspiration does come from knowing people and loving people. And I do know and love a lot of singers. And so I think the project is imminent now that it's been brought up. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we have lots of singers on this broadcast, so anytime you need inspiration, then we have the people ready for you.
Perfect.
Good. So, Richard, this next piece, where it's going to be played by Adrian Zaragoza, your piano student. Tell us about when you met Adrian, and tell us about this, how he became your student.
Well, Adrian came to me 3 or 4 years ago as a young man. Now he's the ripe old age of 17, I believe. And he's just got the most sensitive soul. And his desire to be a pianist is remarkable. His work ethic is impressive. And so he and I have had 2 lessons a week for the last many years. And his work on his technique, his work on his sight reading, his expanding his repertoire has just been exemplary. And so I want you to hear him play. It's a very special thing to hear Adrian Zaragoza.
Wonderful. We'll get to him in a second. I just wanted to note that we have here a conversation going on in the chat box again about you looking for a singer. We have a soprano here, Stephanie Morales, that Lino Rivera has pointed out. Stephanie's here, and she's already been on our show twice. She's one of our few laureates. So if you're looking for inspiration, then we have a friend available for you.
I love that idea. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you.
Okay, so Adrian, hello.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a great honor.
With the honor is all ours. So Adrian, tell us, tell us about why you chose to play this Rachmaninoff.
Well, first of all, thank you, Richard, for those beautiful words. And my teacher, Richard Cionco, is actually the one who chose this piece for me. And I was looking for a piece to play, a lyrical piece, and I had a different piece in mind. And then Richard said, you should listen to Daisies by Rachmaninoff, Opus 38, number 3. And I listened to it, and I loved it more and more each time I heard it. And I realized that this was the right piece for me to learn. So I learned it, and it's been a beautiful process to both learn and play.
Tell us, what's your personal feeling? Well, actually, why don't we listen to the music and then we can talk about it.
Okay.
Bravo. Wonderful. So, Adrian, so tell us, you're getting a lot of applause here that you can't hear, but I can see. So, what is it that's going through you when you're playing this? You're clearly very, feel this music very strongly. You're very attached.
Yes, I really have grown very attached to this piece, and I think it's the music itself, the just the beauty that the music contains. Uh, also the meaning behind the music, the meaning that's hidden both in the music and in the. Oh, I have to first tell a story of this piece. That this piece was originally written as an art song for soprano and piano, and the lyrics of the art song were borrowed from some poetry by Igor Severyanin about daisies. And I've studied this poetry, and I really have grown attached to it as I play it. And this poetry has to do with the beauty of daisies. And to me, it almost kind of symbolizes the beauty of, things in life. I would say the simple beauties in life that many of us take for granted, and so many of the beauties that we have lost temporarily, and because of the pandemic. So this piece has kind of taken on a more significant meaning for me, and it just reminds me of how beautiful life is and how appreciative we must be for every moment we have.
Wow, well, we can clearly hear that in what you're and everything that you play. So tell us, what is it that you're when you're studying with Richard? What is it that you work on? Because clearly you're already a very accomplished pianist.
Oh, thank you. Well, with Richard, we have done so much. We Richard has helped me practically rebuild my technique several times, and we rebuild and rebuild, and it has been so wonderful. And we have learned so many pieces together. We have learned probably over 40 pieces together, and it has been such a wonderful and memorable experience that I will carry for the rest of my life. And we have worked on everything from sight reading to music theory to, of course, technique, repertoire, chamber music, and we have gone to festivals together. We went to Italy in the summer of 2019. We went to the Orfeo Music Festival, and it was a wonderful experience.
Wonderful, fantastic, Richard. So tell us, what is that your point of view? What do you work on normally? What do you how are you helping Adrian to grow? I mean, he's already very mature, it seems.
He is indeed very fine pianist. There's always work to be done, though, technically speaking, because one really has to interface seamlessly with the instrument, as a singer would do so. One has to become one with the instrument, or even one with the music, and it's through technique. Michelangelo said technique is the hand following the mind, and it's never more true than with a pianist, I'll tell you that. So we work on technique every day and every lesson without fail, and as though we're training for the Olympics.
Could you show us a little bit, what does that mean? Could you play something for us and show us what that means to work on technique?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we have exercises like such things like this. And we transpose. And we play scales. In every key, we practice arpeggios, we practice double notes in every key. You name it, we are doing it. Octave exercises in order just to connect the brain to the hand. The neuromuscular system has to be developed and developed and developed in order to play such complex music as Adrian is playing.
And so when you just played those, I have to say, though, the first thing that came to my mind was that it was the mind following the hands. Is that not the case? If you're transposing, then where does the mind come in? Because that seems like a lot of handwork.
Yeah, interesting that you would say that. First and foremostly, we practice everything slowly. So we would if we're going to transpose from C to the key of, I don't know, any key, F major, we have to know the language of F major first. So we go slow. Each key has its own language. Some people call it a key signature, but it's a language. And you have to go slow and spend a lot of time in each language before you can ever go faster and faster and faster. So the brain has to grasp it first, and then you teach it to the muscles.
Understood. So this is what Adrian was talking about when he said you deconstructed his technique and then constructed it up again.
Many times, as he said, many times, yes.
Wonderful. So our next music selection is Mazurka in A minor, opus 17, number 4 by Frédéric Chopin. And you're going to play this, Richard? Why did you choose this?
Well, Chopin is just certainly one of the great composers for the piano. And, you know, it's hard to play a concert, so to speak, without him. So this is one of my favorite mazurkas, the Mazurka in A minor.
Bravo. Wow. Wow. So, Richard, you all obviously have a very close connection with this music. Tell us about that connection and tell us how that came about.
You know, it seems as though every piece that we as musicians gravitate toward, there's always a story somehow, somewhere. And this piece I first heard when I was probably about 12 years old. And I remember a very great pianist, Thomas Schumacher, playing this at a concert that I attended. And I just fell in love with the piece. It sort of casts a magical spell, if you will, nostalgia. It's a beautifully poetic piece. Well, later I would have the great good fortune to become Thomas Schumacher's student. It so inspired me. And I've played the piece virtually all my life with other mazurkas as well. And I find that the mazurkas are extremely wonderful and satisfying to play. They're interesting dances that are quirky yet lyric, and they're just the most typical of Chopin's music, really.
And so in this mazurka, you have those just like Irina was talking about in your music that you wrote for her. They're kind of two different parts, kind of that sad part, the happy part, something like that. What do you make of them?
Well, indeed, every great piece of music has contrast. And when you look at a Beethoven sonata, first theme and a second theme, they're always contrasting, you know. And Chopin's mazurkas often have 2 or 3 themes, always contrasting. And so, yeah, there's that bittersweet reminiscence, if you will, of Chopin's homeland, Poland. And then there's the elegant sort of Parisian Chopin that shows up in the music as well.
Wonderful. So then, very good. Let's go right now to Lino Rivera, another friend of Richard's. And Lino is going to play Chaconne by Bach, arranged by Brahms. Hi, Lino.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, do you want me to say something first or do you want me to play first?
Why don't you play?
Okay. Let me shift the camera. Okay, this is an excerpt from Bach's Chaconne in D minor, originally for violin solo, but transcribed for. This is just an excerpt.
I'm sorry, I think we're losing you. Very nice. Thank you, Lino. I'm sorry that we had some internet connection problems there, but tell us, why is it that you chose to play this music that is with only the left hand?
Um, okay, so it has something to do with my friendship with Richard.
Lino, are you there?
He
Sorry,
was
Richard, maybe you can come in. Richard, are you there?
Yes. I
Tell us a
know.
little bit about this chaconne and why Lino chose it.
Yes. I know what Lino's trying to say here. It is interesting. It's for the left hand alone. Brahms transcribed this from the violin for the left hand alone, and it's just absolutely fabulous. The pianist feels what the violinist feels with just the one left hand. Lino Rivera and I met in 1986, and we were students together at the University of Maryland before I went on to Juilliard and before he moved out here to California. And he was looking for an idea for his doctoral dissertation topic. And we sat up late nights talking about ideas, and it came down to this. He decided to do transcriptions, arrangements, and paraphrases. And boy, are there a lot. Right, Lino? So this is one of those types of pieces that we kind of mulled over back in 1987, really it was.
Fantastic.
and
Wonderful.
it is yes, and so I thought it was proper for me to play something like this to remember those times when Richard and I, and we're still very, very much interested in transcriptions and arrangements.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you. So, Richard, our last piece of the night is by Astor Piazzolla, Milonga dell'Angel. Tell us, why did you choose this?
Well, in keeping with what Lino Rivera just said, it's an arrangement. It's an arrangement that I made a year and a half ago before the lockdown occurred for solo piano. And I love Piazzolla's music, and I don't think I've ever met anybody who doesn't. And this piece is just exquisitely beautiful. So I haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to perform it, and because of our present day situation, but I'd like to play it for you here.
Bravo. Wonderful. Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about this piece and the Milonga. I guess that's where people do tango. That's kind of a gathering where people do tango, as I understand it. What's this music about?
Well, the milonga has this beautiful swaying rhythm. It's a little bit of a more simple rhythm than the tango. You know, which has a little more complexity to it. But the milonga, this particular milonga, is just so lyric. And to hear Piazzolla play it, you know, the great YouTube has brought everything into our living rooms. You know, we almost don't have to go anywhere. Don't say that, of course, but on YouTube you can hear Piazzolla playing this in so many different ways and in so many different you know, concerts and different decades and different instrumentation, and so here's just yet another version of the piece.
And if you would compare this to the Chopin that you played before, what's the difference?
Well, they are both dances, and it's an interesting correlation. You know, the Argentine sensibility to dance is different than that of the Polish sensibility. However, they both have a kind of rustic character, if you will, and they both have a strong nationalist idea behind them, meaning Chopin was really elevating the music of his culture, the folk music of his culture, and Piazzolla certainly elevated the tango and this type of dance music to the concert hall as well as to the soiree, if you will.
Fantastic. So we're out of time, unfortunately. I'd like to ask Richard, tell us what are your future plans?
Well, we've been vaccinated and we hope to get out and we hope to play more concerts. And I have several things coming up on Zoom, a master class at CSU Northridge, and you know, we're putting together some concerts with our students, and it should be an interesting next few months while everybody is getting their vaccines, you know.
Understood. So let's see how we can stay in touch with Richard. There we have his website at the California Sacramento State. We have here, it is csus.edu/faculty/c/Cionco. And so Richard, people can write to you at this email?
Perfect, yes, by all means.
Wonderful. So there it is, Richard Cionco, wonderful. So thank you so very much to Richard. Thank you very much to Irina Saito. Thank you very much to Adrian Zaragoza and Professor Lino Rivera, all for your beautiful playing and beautiful music. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. So let's take a look now at our upcoming show. This is Wednesday, March 24th, next week. Beethoven's Missa Solemnis as a Holy Mass. It is hard to say if Beethoven somehow expressed this quote unquote confession of faith in the Missa Solemnis. Another creed, however, was definitely applied, one that Beethoven noted in his journal in the year 1820, quote, "The moral law in us and the star-studded heaven above us. Immanuel Kant, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point," end quote. I find two details from Beethoven's entry of this sentence into his journal especially revealing. The underlining of the entire sentence and the three exclamation points. Triple exclamation point may be translated into music as triple forte, a dynamic which appears quite often in the Missa Solemnis. The Egyptologist Professor Jan Assmann's latest book is entirely dedicated to Beethoven's Missa Solemnis. To discuss Beethoven's Magnum Opus and its relationship to Christian worship, Professor Assmann is joined by Father Dr. Martin Meyerhofer of the International Theological Institute Thurmau, Tilman Hecker, Artistic Director of the Pandemic Era Music Installation The World to Come, and Hans Rehberg, Choir Director of the Radio Choir of Berlin. So again, that's next week, Beethoven's Missa Solemnis as a Holy Mass. So thank you so very much again to Richard. Thank you very much to Irina Sato, to Adrian Zaragoza, to Lino Rivera and Niels Moose. Thank you very much to our all-star production team led by Juan Urrea. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants, for making this all worthwhile. From the Bay Area, California, from Sacramento, California, from Vienna, Austria, good night, goodbye, see you next Wednesday.